वासुदेव नारायण नमस्कृत्य नरं च नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भक्तसेवया भगवति उत्तमं श्लोके मुक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 12, Beyond Renunciation and Knowledge. So beyond renunciation, knowledge is only bhakti. And this is what Krishna is explaining in this chapter. Text 13 onwards. Mat kama ramanam jaram aswarupa vidva balaha brahmam paramam prabhu sangachat sahasrasha. All those hundreds of thousands of gopis, understanding me to be the most charming lover and ardently desiring me in that way, were unaware of my actual position. Yet by intimately associating with me, the gopis attained me, the supreme absolute truth. The words aswarupa vidaha, not understanding my actual position or form, indicate that the lovely gopis were so completely absorbed in conjugal love for Lord Krishna that they were not aware of the Lord's unlimited potencies as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains this under the meanings of the word aswarupa vidaha. In Sanskrit, the word vid also means to acquire. Thus, aswarupa vidaha indicates that the gopis, like other pure devotees of the Lord, were not interested in achieving sarupya mukti, the liberation of acquiring a body form similar to the Lord's. So what did they achieve? Since the gopis had realized their eternal spiritual forms as servitors of the Lord, the word sarupa may also indicate their own spiritual bodies. And thus aswarupa vidaha means that the gopis never thought as materialists do of their own body beauty. Although the gopis are the most beautiful girls in the Lord's creation, they never thought of their own bodies, but rather were always meditating on the transcendental body of Lord Krishna to give him all the pleasure. Although we cannot imitate the gopis' exalted conjugal feelings, we can follow their superb example of practical Krishna consciousness. They naturally took shelter of Lord Krishna and achieved the highest perfection of life. Tasmattam udvot srijya chodanam pratichodanam pravrittim cha nivrittim cha shrotavyam shrutameva cha mam ekam eva sharanam atmanam sarvadehinam yahi sarvatma avena maya seyahi katu akutu bhaya. Therefore, my dear Uddhav, abandon the Vedic mantras as well as the procedures of supplementary Vedic literatures and their positive and negative injunctions. Disregard that which has been heard and that which is to be heard. Simply take shelter of me alone, for I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, situated within the heart of all conditioned souls. Take shelter of me wholeheartedly, and by my grace be free from fear in all circumstances. Shri Uddhav inquired from Lord Krishna about the symptoms of saintly persons and liberated souls, and the Lord has replied in terms of different levels of spiritual advancement, distinguishing between those who are able to understand Lord Krishna to be the principal goal of life and those loving devotees who accept Lord Krishna and devotion service to him as the only goal of life. Lord Krishna also mentioned that he is captured by his loving devotees and even by those who sincerely associate with his loving devotees. Among all the devotees, the gopis of Vrindavan were described by the Lord as having achieved such a rare state of pure devotion service that Lord Krishna personally feels constantly indebted to them. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Lord Krishna previously kept the gopis' love for him concealed in his heart because of its confidential nature and the Lord's own gravity. Finally, however, even Lord Krishna could not remain silent about the intense love of the gopis. And thus in these verses, the Lord reveals to Uddhav how the gopis loved him in Vrindavan and brought him fully under their control. The Lord would relax in secret places with the loving gopis, and by conjugal spontaneous affection, the greatest love was exchanged between them. So this is even that, as I said yesterday, even Krishna could not stop talking about gopis and their love. And because all the Brajvasis by now they had left, because when Krishna last went to Vrindavan after killing Dantavakra, he sent all the Brajvasis back to Golok Vrindavan. And now he is about to leave, so definitely he's thinking of gopis and how he's going to reunite with them, especially Srimati Radharani. Actually, Lord Krishna is hinting that Uddhav should assimilate the example of the gopis and try to advance further in Krishna consciousness by following in the footsteps of the cowherd damsels of Braja. Any conditioned soul who is unsatisfied with the cruel laws of nature, which impose disease, old age, and death, should understand that Lord Krishna can deliver all living beings from the problems of material existence. There is no need to entangle oneself in unauthorized sectarian rituals, injunctions, or prohibitions. One should simply surrender to Lord Krishna, following the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Lord Krishna himself. By the authorized, regulated process of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, one easily achieves spiritual perfection. And as it is said earlier, that we cannot imitate gopis' feelings, gopis' love for Krishna, but we can take that as an example for us to follow. Shri Uddhava Vacha, Sanshaya Shanvato Vacha, Tav Yogeshwareshwara, Nanivartatatmasto, Yena Brahmyati Me Manaha. Shri Uddhav said, O Lord of all masters of mystic power, I have heard your words, but the doubt in my heart does not go away, because my mind is bewildered. In the first verse of 10th canto of this 10th chapter of this canto, the Lord stated that one should take shelter of him and execute one's duties within the Varnashram system without material desire. But then slowly he further brought it up to the level of gopis bhakti. It is a fact that until one understands Lord Krishna to be everything, it's not possible to retire from ordinary worldly duties. And then Lord recommended that one retire from worldly duties and systematically cultivate knowledge, accepting him as a supreme. Uddhav understood this instruction to indicate Gyan Mishra Bhakti, or devotional service to the Lord mixed with the secondary desire to accumulate knowledge. But then Krishna gave other instructions. In chapter 11, verse 18, the Lord emphasized the importance of faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in verse 23, Krishna extensively widened his discussion of devotion service, emphasizing that one should be faithful and hear and chant the glories of the Lord. The Lord concluded that both the development and perfection of devotion service depend on association with the devotees. So that was in the last chapter. So in last chapter, Uddhav inquired about actual ways and means of devotional service and about the symptoms of devotional perfection. And in verse 48, Lord Krishna stated that unless one takes to the process of devotional service, one's attempt for liberation will be useless. So ultimately, it's a devotional service. But now in this chapter, he just reveals devotional service means what gopis did. That is the topmost. Similarly, in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna took slowly Arjuna from Karma Yoga and then Jnana Yoga. He gave some instructions on Hatha Yoga also, but ultimately it was Bhakti Yoga. But Uddhavji himself, I won't say he's confused, but he is representing all of us. We get confused. What does Krishna want? Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Saesha Jivo Vivara Prasuti Pranena Ghoshena Guham Pravishta Manomayam Sukshmam Upetya Rupam Matra Swaro Varna iti Stavishtaha. The Supreme Personality of God had said, My dear Uddhava, the Supreme Lord gives life to every living being and is situated within the heart along with the life air and primal sound vibration. The Lord can be perceived in his subtle form within the heart by one's mind, since the Lord controls the mind of everyone, even great demigods like Lord Shiva. The Supreme Lord also assumes a gross form as the various sounds of the Vedas, composed of short and long vowels and consonants of different intonations. Means Krishna controls everything. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments as follows on the dialogue between Lord Krishna and Uddhava. Uddhava was bewildered and doubtful because Lord Krishna explained many different processes such as devotional service, speculative knowledge, renunciation, mystic yoga, austerities, pious duties, and so on. However, all of these processes are meant to help the living entities obtain the shelter of Lord Krishna, and ultimately no Vedic process should be understood in any other way. Thus, Lord Krishna explained the entire Vedic system, placing everything in proper order. In fact, Lord Krishna was surprised that Uddhava foolishly thought that he was meant to practice every process as if each method were meant simply for him. Lord Krishna therefore wants to inform his devotee, My dear Uddhava, when I told you that analytic knowledge is to be practiced, pious duties are to be performed, devotion service is obligatory, etc. I was instructing all living entities, using you as my immediate audience. That which I have spoken, am speaking now, and will speak in the future should be understood as guidance for all living entities in different situations. But this is also one of the beauties of Vedic scriptures or instructions of Krishna also. Everybody is on a different level of consciousness, on a different level of their progress, spiritual progress, on a different level of how fast they are making progress. So different processes are mentioned not to confuse everybody, but one takes up the process one likes, one's consciousness is more aligned with, and he starts making progress slowly, slowly, slowly. It's not a one lifetime procedure. It takes many, many lifetimes. But we start from wherever we are. We cannot imitate anybody else. We cannot compete with anybody else. We cannot compare with anybody else. That's all. Srila Prabhupada, when he was here, when he was preaching all over the world, he was preaching. And how many people joined him? How many people took it up seriously? Even Srila Prabhupada. He was only preaching Krishna consciousness. Means everybody was not at that level to get his message, to take up his message seriously. So similarly, we cannot put anybody else down either. That, oh, so you're not doing bhakti, you're a fallen soul, you get away from me. I'm such a pure devotee. No. We have to respect everybody and we have to try to help everybody. Ultimately, it's not in our hand to make anybody a devotee. No way. It's only by mercy of Krishna, by mercy of Guru Parampara, Srila Prabhupada. Somebody's heart will be transformed. All we have to do is our service as sincere servant of Srila Prabhupada to try to give this message to others, to bring others on the path of devotion service. That's all we can do. Transformation is not in our hands. As here also it says, Krishna is a controller of the mind, not we. We are nobody. Even our mind is not in our control, so how can we help anybody else? So all we try to do is serve Prabhupada by bringing people to Krishna consciousness. Thus, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Lord with light-hearted and encouraging words reveals to Uddhava the deep purpose behind the variety of Vedic procedures. Again, it's a long part, but I'll just go towards the last paragraph. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, this verse may be understood in another way. The word Jiva indicates Lord Krishna, who gives life to the residents of Vrindavan. And Vivar Prasuti indicates that although Lord Krishna eternally performs his pastimes in the spiritual world, beyond the vision of the conditioned souls, he also enters within the material universe to display these same pastimes. The word Guham Pravishta indicates that after displaying such pastimes, the Lord withdraws them and enters into his unmanifested pastimes. So those pastimes not manifest to the conditioned souls. In this case, Matra indicates the transcendental senses of the Lord. Swar indicates the Lord's transcendental sound vibration. So now he is going to unmanifest his pastimes over here, but his pastimes are Nitya Leela, so they'll go on in some other place, especially in the spiritual world. Yatha nalakhe anil bandhurushma balen darunya dhimmathyamana anu prajato avisha samedhate tathav me vyaktiriyam hivani. When sticks of kindling wood are vigorously rubbed together, heat is produced by contact with air, and a spark of fire appears. Once the fire is kindled, ghee is added and the fire blazes. Similarly, I become manifest in the sound vibration of the Vedas. Lord Krishna here explains the most confidential meaning of Vedic knowledge. The Vedas first regulate ordinary material work and channel the fruits into ritualistic sacrifices, which ostensibly reward the performer with future benefits. The real purpose of these sacrifices, however, is to accustom a materialistic worker to offering the fruits of his work to superior Vedic authority. And an expert fruitive worker gradually exhausts the possibilities of material enjoyment and naturally gravitates towards a superior stage of philosophical speculation. So it means one goes from Karma Kanda, then the Gyan, and then the Yoga, and then slowly he wants to make further progress in Bhakti. The word Havishya Samedhate indicates that by progressive advancement of Vedic sacrifice, the fire of spiritual knowledge gradually blazes, illuminating everything and destroying the chain of fruitive work. Lord Krishna considered Uddhav to be the most qualified person to hear this elaborate transcendental knowledge. Therefore, he mercifully instructs Uddhav so that he may enlighten the sages at Patrika Ashram, thus fulfilling the purpose of the sages' lives. So Uddhav is going to give this knowledge to the sages. Sages means the 4 Kumaras are going to appear there, I think. Either 4 Kumaras or I'm not sure who Uddhav spoke to. Let's see. Evam gadhi karma gatir visargo grano raso drik sparsha shrutischa sankalpa vijnanam athabhimana sutram rajah sattva tamo vikara. The functions of the working senses, the organ of speech, the hands, the legs, the genitals, and the anals, and the functions of the knowledge acquiring senses, the nose, tongue, eyes, skin, and ears, along with the functions of the subtle senses of mind, intelligence, consciousness, and false ego, as well as the function of the subtle pradhan and the interaction of the 3 modes of material nature, all these should be understood as my materially manifest form. So, of course, everything comes from Krishna, and these are material forms of Krishna. A Krishna conscious person sees the entire material world as a manifestation of the Lord's potencies. There is therefore no legitimate scope for material sense gratification, because everything is an expansion from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and belongs to Him. One who can understand the expansion of the Lord within subtle and gross material manifestations gives up his desire to live in this world. In the spiritual world, everything is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge. The exclusive feature of the material world is that Here, the living entity dreams that he is Lord. A sane person giving up this hallucination finds no attractive features in the kingdom of Maya and therefore returns home back to Godhead. This is all Krishna's manifestation, Krishna's energy. But here we think we can enjoy this material energy, although we cannot. So this should bring about renunciation or detachment. Ayam hi jivastri vridabja yonir avyakta eko vayasas adhya vishlishta shaktir deva bhati bijani yonim pratipadya yadvat. When many seeds are placed in an agricultural field, innumerable manifestations of trees, bushes, vegetables, and so on will arise from a single source, the soil. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who gives life to all and is eternal, originally exists beyond the scope of the cosmic manifestation. In the course of time, however, the Lord, who is resting place of the three modes of nature and the source of the universal lotus flower, in which the cosmic manifestation takes place, divides his material potencies and thus appears to be manifest in innumerable forms, although he is one. So again, coming back to lots of technical and philosophical knowledge. In the course of time, the Lord's material potencies are divided and manifest as bodies, bodily paraphernalia, sense objects, bodily expansions, false ego, and false proprietorship. This is us. Thus the Lord expands his conscious living potency called Jiva Shakti, which is manifest in innumerable material forms, such as those of men, demigods, animals, and so on. From the example of the seeds sown in an agricultural field, we can understand that innumerable manifestations may arise from a single source. Similarly, although the Lord is one, he becomes manifest in innumerable forms through the expansions of his different potencies. Yasmin nidam protam asheshamotam pato yatha tantu vitana sanstha ya esha sansara taruh purana karmatmakah pushpa phale prasute. Just as woven cloth rests from the expansion of lengthwise and crosswise threads, similarly, the entire universe is expanded on the lengthwise and crosswise potency of the Supreme Personality of God and is situated within him. The conditioned soul has been accepting material bodies since time immemorial, and these bodies are like great trees sustaining one's material existence. Just as a tree first blossoms and then produces fruit, similarly, the tree of material existence, one's material body, produces the various results of material existence. Because it also, the tree, when it grows, it also produces a seed for the next tree. So similarly, our material body, it produces a seed for the next body. I mean, not the soul, but the reason for the next body, the desire or the karma, consciousness. Before a tree produces fruit, blossoms appear. Similarly, the word pushpa phale, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, indicates the happiness and distress of material existence. One's material life may appear to be blossoming, but ultimately there will appear the bitter fruits of old age, death, and other catastrophes. Attachment to the material body, which is always inclined towards sense gratification, is a root cause of material existence and is therefore called sansara taru. The tendency to exploit the external energy of the Supreme Lord has existed since time immemorial, as expressed by the word Purana Karmatmaka. The material universe is an expansion of the illusory potency of the Supreme Lord and is always dependent on him and non-different from him. This simple understanding can relieve the conditioned souls from endless wandering in the unhappy kingdom of Maya. But this detachment Detachment has to come with the knowledge. Dvayasya bija shatmul strinalah panchaskandha pancharas prasuti dashaka shako dvisuparna nidas trivalkalo dvifalo arkam pravishtaha adanti chakam falamasya gridhra grame chara ekam aranyavasa hansaya ekam bahrupam ijyara maya mayam veda vedam. This tree of material existence has 2 seeds, hundreds of roots, 3 lower trunks, and 5 upper trunks. Wow. It produces 5 flavors and has 11 branches and a nest made by 2 birds. The tree is covered by 3 types of bark, gives 2 fruits, and extends up to the sun. Those lusty after material enjoyment and dedicated to family life enjoy one of the tree's fruits. And swan-like men in the renounced order of life enjoy the other fruit. One who, with the help of a bona fide spiritual master, can understand this tree to be manifestation of the potency of one supreme truth appearing in many forms, actually knows the meaning of the Vedic literature. So spoken in very code words. The 2 seeds of this tree are sinful and pious activities, and the hundreds of roots are the living entities, innumerable material desires, which chain them to material existence. So roots are the desires, they are keeping us bound to the material existence. The 3 lower trunks represent the 3 modes of material nature, and the 5 upper trunks represent the 5 gross material elements. Okay. The tree produces 5 flavors: sound, form, touch, taste, and aroma, and has 11 branches: the 5 working senses, 5 knowledge acquiring, and the mind. 2 birds, namely the individual soul and the super soul, have made their nest in this tree. And the 3 types of bark are air, bile, and mucus, kapha, pitta, and vayu, the constituent elements of the body. The 2 fruits of this tree are happiness and distress. So those who are busy trying to enjoy the company of beautiful women, money, and other luxurious aspects of illusion enjoy the fruit of unhappiness. One should remember that even in the heavenly planets, there is anxiety and death. Those who have renounced material goals and had taken to the path of spiritual enlightenment enjoy the fruit of happiness. One who takes the assistance of bona fide spiritual masters can understand that this elaborate tree is simply the manifestation of the external potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is ultimately one without a second. If one can see the Supreme Lord as ultimate cause of everything, then his knowledge is perfect. Otherwise, if one is entangled in Vedic rituals or Vedic speculation without knowledge of the Supreme, he has not achieved the perfection of life. So this is our tree of life. And so strong, so complicated it is, every lifetime we create another tree and then we get bound up more and more. We don't want to get out. Evam guru pasanayaka bhaktya vidya kutarena shitena dhira vivrishya jivashayama pramattaha sampadya chatmanamatatya jastram. With steady intelligence, you should develop unalloyed devotional service by careful worship of the spiritual master, and with the sharpened axe of transcendental knowledge, you should cut off the subtle material covering of the soul. Upon realizing the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead, you should then give up that axe of analytical knowledge. Even in Bhagavad Gita, he says the same thing with the axe of knowledge. Just cut off the attachment to the material world. Because Uddhava had achieved the perfection of personal association with Lord Krishna, there was no need for him to maintain the mentality of a conditioned soul. Uddhav could personally serve the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual world. Indeed, Uddhav requested this opportunity at the beginning of this great conversation. As stated here, Guru Pasana Eka Bhaktya. One can achieve pure devotion service by worshipping a bona fide spiritual master. It's not recommended here that one give up pure devotion service or one spiritual master. Rather, it is clearly stated by the words Vidya Kutharena that one should cultivate knowledge of the material world as described by Lord Krishna in this chapter. One should fully understand that each and every aspect of the material creation is the expansion of the illusory potency of the Lord. Such knowledge works as a sharpened axe to cut down the roots of material existence. In this way, even the stubborn, subtle body created by the three modes of nature is cut to pieces, and one becomes apramatta, or sane and cautious in Krishna consciousness. So Lord Krishna therefore tells Uddhava, Tejastram, give up the axe of analytic knowledge by which you have cut down your sense of proprietorship and residence in the material world, and then take up devotional service. That's it. So, wonderful, wonderful instructions. But this knowledge that Prabhupada has given us, it's amazing knowledge. And through Prabhupada's books, reading Prabhupada's books, so many, thousands and thousands of people all over the world, they're gaining this wonderful knowledge and engaging in devotional service at whatever speed and whatever level, that's different. But this appreciation of Prabhupada's books and the philosophy given in them, it's amazing. And one who reads it properly, one who tries to follow, definitely develops attachment for Krishna and detachment from the material world. Just like this month of Kartik, before ISKCON, I never even heard of what to do in this month of Kartik. This Deepdan and Damodarashtakam and so many things. Never heard of. But coming in contact with ISKCON and following the procedure, then hearing and doing all the chanting and this Vrata, Deepdan and this and that, and going to Vrindavan, taking a trip, without Prabhupada's instructions, knowledge he has given, it was not at all possible. So with this axe of knowledge, Prabhupada, the Lord Krishna is saying that you should cut all the desires, cut down everything. You don't need to remain here. But the knowledge is important. But as Krishna earlier explained, devotional service is way beyond knowledge. But the knowledge that we are talking is of devotional service. It's not just dry speculative knowledge. It has no connection with devotional service. Knowledge that we are trying to understand is completely connected with devotion. This is devotion. Shravanam Kirtanam. So Shravanam is devotional service. So this is what we are performing. By mercy of Prabhupada, slowly, we all are making progress. So thus ends the purports to 11th canto, 12th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Beyond Renunciation and Knowledge. So we can start the next chapter, chapter 13, the Hans Avatar, answers the questions of the sons of Brahma. If somebody has any questions or points to discuss, we can discuss, or we can start this next chapter. Okay, I guess we can start next chapter. Text 1. Shri Bhagwan Uvacha Sattvam Rajastama iti Guna Buddherna Chatmana Satvena Ninyatma Hanya Sattvam Satvena Chevahi. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. The three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance, pertain to material intelligence and not to the spirit soul. By development of material goodness, one can conquer the modes of passion and ignorance, and by cultivation of transcendental goodness, one may free himself even from material goodness. So this is the whole procedure. Goodness in the material world never exists in a pure form. Therefore, it is common knowledge that one on the material platform, no one is working without personal motivation. In the material world, goodness is always mixed with some amount of passion and ignorance, whereas spiritual or purified goodness, Vishuddha represents the liberated platform of perfection. Materially, one is proud to be an honest, compassionate man, but unless one is fully Krishna conscious, one will speak truths that are not ultimately significant. And one will give mercy that is ultimately useless, because the onward march of material time removes all situations and persons from the material stage. Our so-called mercy and truth applied to situations that shortly will not exist. Means sometimes goodness, sometimes passion, sometimes ignorance takes over. That's all it happens. Satvad dharma bhavet vriddhat punso mad bhakti lakshana satvikopasaya sattvam tato dharma pravartate. When the living entity becomes strongly situated in the mode of goodness, then religious principles characterized by devotion service to me become prominent. One can strengthen the mode of goodness by cultivation of those things that are already situated in goodness, and thus religious principles arise. Since the three modes of material nature are constantly in conflict, vying for supremacy, how is it possible that the mode of goodness can subdue the modes of passion and ignorance? So Krishna here explains how one can be strongly fixed in the mode of goodness, which automatically gives rise to religious principles. So how does by choosing food, attitudes, work, recreation, etc., strictly in the mode of goodness, one will become situated in that mode? The usefulness of Sattvagun, or the mode of goodness, is that it produces religious principles aimed at and characterized by devotional service to Lord Krishna. Without such devotional service to the Lord, the mode of goodness is considered useless and merely another aspect of material illusion. So from goodness only, one can take up devotional service. And Prabhupada also explained that mode of goodness is like the airport from which the plane of bhakti flies up. Srila Madhvacharya points out in this regard that an increase in the mode of goodness strengthens religious principles, and the invigorated execution of religious principles strengthens the mode of goodness. In that way, one can advance higher and higher in this mode of spiritual happiness. So for the plane of bhakti to take off, we have to be in mode of goodness. Dharma rajas tamo hanyat sattva vriddhir anuttama ashu nashyati tanmulo hiya dharma ubhaye hate. Religious principles is strengthened by the mode of goodness, destroy the influence of passion and ignorance. Sometimes they try to take over because of we have our previous sanskaras, so many lifetimes. But if we are determined to remain in goodness, then passion or ignorance cannot take over. When passion and ignorance are overcome, the original cause, irreligion, is quickly vanquished. Agamo apaha prajadesha kala karma janma dhyana mantro atha sanskaro dashayate guna hetavaha. According to the quality of religious scriptures, water, one's association with one's children, or with people in general, The particular place, the time, activities, birth, meditation, chanting of mantras, and purificatory rituals, the modes of nature become differently prominent. The 10 items mentioned above possess superior and inferior qualities and are thus identified as being in the goodness, passion, or ignorance. One can increase the mode of goodness by selecting religious scriptures in goodness. So, see, all religious scriptures are not in goodness either, like Puranas. 18 Puranas, 6 are in for people in mode of, I mean, scriptures are in, scriptures are scriptures, they are transcendental, but they are for different people in different modes. Like 6 Puranas are for people in mode of ignorance, 6 for passion, 6 for people in mode of goodness. But the Srimad Bhagavatam is called Amala Purana, that is beyond any, that is for people beyond mode of goodness. So one can increase the mode of goodness by selecting religious scriptures in goodness, pure water, friendship with other persons in goodness, and so on, means association. Pure water, so important. Jaisa pani vaisi vani. One should scrupulously avoid any of these 10 items that may be polluted by an inferior mode of nature. Tattat satvikam evesham yadyat vriddha prachakshate nindanti tamasam tattat rajasam tadupekshitam. Among the 10 items I have just mentioned, the great sages who understand Vedic knowledge have praised and recommended those that are in the mode of goodness, criticized and rejected those in the mode of ignorance, and shown indifference to those in the mode of passion. So recommendation is for mode of goodness. Satvikanyeva seveta puman sattva vivriddhai tato dharmas tato jnanam yavat smritir apohanam. Until one revives one's direct knowledge of the spirit soul and drives away the illusory identification with the material body and mind caused by the 3 modes of nature, one must cultivate those things in the mode of goodness. By increasing the mode of goodness, one automatically can understand and practice religious principles, and by such practice, transcendental knowledge is awakened. One who desires to cultivate the mode of goodness must consider the following points. One should study religious scriptures that teach detachment from mental speculation and material sense gratification, not scriptures that provide rituals and mantras to increase material ignorance. So it's all in the scriptures, but we have to see what we get more aligned with. Such materialistic scriptures do not give attention to the Supreme Personality of God and are thus basically atheistic. One should accept pure water for quenching thirst and cleaning the body. There is no need for a devotee to use colognes, perfume, whiskey, beer, etc., which are all polluted manifestations of water. One should associate with persons who are cultivating detachment from the material world and not with those who are materially attached or sinful in their behavior. One should live in a solitary place where devotion service is practiced and discussed among Vaishnavas. One should not be spontaneously attracted to busy highways, shopping centers, sports stadiums, and so on. Concerning time, one should rise by 4 o'clock in the morning and utilize the auspicious Brahma Muhurta to advance in Krishna consciousness. Similarly, one should avoid the sinful influence of hours such as midnight when ghosts and demons are encouraged to become active. Concerning work, one should execute one's prescribed duties, following the regulative principles of spiritual life, and utilize all of one's energy for pious purposes. Time should not be wasted in frivolous or materialistic activities, of which there are now literally millions and millions in modern society. So the idea is one who increases the mode of goodness will certainly become fixed in religious principles, and automatically knowledge will arise. As knowledge increases, one is able to understand the eternal spirit soul and the supreme soul, Lord Krishna. Thus, the soul becomes free from the artificial imposition of gross and subtle material bodies caused by the modes of material nature. So, spiritual knowledge burns to ashes the material designations that cover the living entity, and once its real eternal life begins. वेणु संघर्ष जो वहनिर दग्ध्वा शाम्यति तद्वनम एवं गुण व्यत्यज्य व्यक्ति अजो देह शाम्यति तत्क्रियः. In a bamboo forest, the wind sometimes rubs the bamboo stalks together, and such friction generates a blazing fire that consumes the very source of its birth, the bamboo forest. Thus, the fire is automatically calmed by its own action. Similarly, by the competition and interaction of the material modes of nature, the subtle and gross material bodies are generated. If one uses his mind and body to cultivate knowledge, then such enlightenment destroys the influence of the modes of nature that generated one's body. Thus, like the fire, the body and mind are pacified by their own actions in destroying the source of their birth. So, very nice example that just like the fire that arises because of friction between the bamboo sticks, it just destroys the whole forest. So, we have the material body, material senses, material gross, subtle bodies, everything is material, but by the knowledge that can come from all this, it can destroy this whole existence of material enjoyment. A good person is sometimes found by passion, and a passionate person sometimes wants to give up everything and rest. An ignorant person may sometimes become disgusted with his depraved life. And a passionate person may sometimes indulge in bad habits. Due to interactive conflict of the modes of nature, one wanders throughout material nature, creating one body after another by one's own work, just karma. As it is said, variety is the mother of enjoyment, and the variety of material modes gives hope to the conditioned souls that by changing their material situation, their unhappiness and frustration can be turned into happiness and satisfaction. But even if one acquires relative material happiness, that will soon be disturbed by the inevitable flux of the material modes. So this knowledge that one can develop, it can help remove or get rid of this material gross and subtle bodies. So I guess I can stop here now. See anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri.